All right, back to the ATF 4473. It's available on the ATF website. You can download it. You can start using it. A lot of you have, by mistake, maybe. This whole issue came up on December 6th when someone at the ATF was nice enough to accidentally post the proposed 4473, which it's with its changes, confused a lot of us out there. Lo and behold, we found out it wasn't intended to be launched in the way it has, but it is out there and for use by you now. Here's a disclaimer. The 4473 is still subject to change by the ATF. It may not be in its final form. If you are printing off these forms, don't print too many. It can change before the end of the month. They still have executive review and general and legal review of the form in its entirety, including the instructions, so it might change a little bit. You can order these now. There's actually paper forms that have been printed and been distributed. We're hearing of those getting received by FFLs who placed some early orders. Here's the what you must know. It must be in use by April 1st of this year. You do not need to be using the 4473 in the new form at all right now. So even though the ATF said they recommend using immediately, you do not need to do that. Okay. Our training today is going to focus on any major concerns or issues. We will tell you there are no major construct changes or format changes to the 4473. Just some things to understand and what some of the new questions ask for. Let's see. The form has been revised primarily to coincide with the Bipartisan Safe Communities Act, looking at transfers to folks under 21 years of age, and as well as the 10-day the extended delay if necessary by either NICS or by your state agencies, and how to manage that process. There is a lot of text updates that we're going to go over that are pretty important, and we'd like to make sure you guys all understand and know about them. So, and we will have online, we'll have, aside from this webinar, everyone who's attended today will receive access to our online training that is hopefully due out soon for your new employees to understand how to manage and navigate the 4473 process. Right. So what's new? Long story short, Section A, not very new, not a lot of changes, but right at the top, you can we highlighted all the changes for you to understand. And again, it's being recorded for employees who are missing this presentation. But that first warning notice, they've extended the 10-year criminal prosecutable time in prison for you for relying on this form as a firearm transferee or customer from 10 years to 15, as if 10 wasn't enough. It's now 15 years, threat of imprisonment, and a $250,000 fine if you're buying a firearm for somebody other than yourself and making any false representations on this form. Secondly, up there at the top right corner, they've simply taken the word serial out of the top right corner designated box where you were priorly using the transaction serial number for referencing or keeping track of your firearms. Now it just says transaction number, if any. This is nice. It's less confusing. A lot of gun dealers will use different types of numbers in that box, referencing maybe gun tags on the firearms on display, or maybe a location where that firearm was pulled from. But now it's just a very simply the transaction number, if any, that you use to keep record and traceability in your store. This number is important, very important, if you have any systemic way to manage your form using these numbers to make sure they coincide with those numbers in the disposition side of your A&D book. If you're still using these numbers instead of writing addresses for your transferee customer addresses. All right. So minor there, but little text changes. All right, moving on to Section A, filled out by you, the FFL. This is coinciding with the new marking ruling that came out back in August with the privately manufactured firearms. If you do have a PMF, as they're known as, you must be indicating such in Section A, Box 1, and making sure that firearm is not only identified as a PMF, personally or privately manufactured firearm, but also that it is serialized appropriately as required by the new marking ruling. We're not recommending to any FFL who calls us to take in PMFs at this point, unless you're qualified to do so, ready to do so, ready to stamp these firearms and log them appropriately in your books and take on the responsibility of someone who has built a gun, especially on the pawnbroker side, or if you're buying a used gun, you can't guarantee any quality, warranty, or functionality of a firearm, and you absorb the liability if you go ahead and bring one of those firearms into your place of business. But PMF is required if it's basically a ghost gun that someone built and it needs to have a serial number. Okay. That process introduces it into the whole FFL tracing system. Also, Section A, down at box 8, if any of you are doing private party transfers, you now have to indicate, obviously, if any part of this transaction relates to a private party transfer. Now, it's a simple little word change, but long story short, you could have different guns on your 4473. One might be a private party transfer firearm for a customer. One might be a new firearm that maybe that customer is purchasing, or used gun. Could be a pawn redemption. We are, when folks call us and ask us about private party transfers, and we help them walk through it. It's required in many states, not all, but someday probably will be coming to a state near you. There's a whole ATF pamphlet available on how to do this, but we tell everyone, do not include a private party transfer firearm on the same 4473 as you would for a new or used firearm for that same customer, because when you're doing a private party transfer, you are not taking acquisition of that firearm from the seller, from neighbor A who's selling it to neighbor B. You're not taking acquisition of that firearm until you actually get a proceed from your background check agency. Therefore, if you get a delay on a customer and they also have a new gun on this 4473, that customer may want to come in and pick up that other firearm as soon as they get a proceed, which might be tomorrow or later today. They might want to come in and pick up both firearms, but hence you only have one. You do not have the firearm involved in a private party transfer. You'll have to wait on disposing of this firearm in most software platforms. Most platforms will not let you proceed or transfer one firearm on a 4473. You have to transfer all of them at the same time to get a proper disposition on those firearms involved in the disposition. So long story short, if you're doing private party transfers, do not add any other firearms to those 4473s. Do them separately. Explain to the customer you need to do them separately for disposition reasons. Box 10 or line 10, where the transferee or customer is asked if they reside in the city limits. Most customers may know this, but if they don't, there's a box that says unknown. You do not need to coach or counsel on this, and you don't need to help them on this if they simply do not know if they reside within their city limits. They check unknown. This new box will assist FBI or your point of contact state agency to notify local law enforcement when a felon attempts to purchase a firearm when they were obviously told not to do that. Again, this is part of a new Biden Safe Communities Act program where FBI NICS or state agencies must notify local law enforcement within 24 hours. Hence, this box will help them expedite that part of their process. Back over to Section B. Question 21A for the customer has changed the question, where it used to ask if you are the actual buyer of this the firearm listed. Now it's asking if you're the actual buyer of all of the firearms listed. Okay. We don't know why this is changed. I mean, the text doesn't really expand responsibility or liability, but they have changed that wording. But more importantly, on Section B, question 20A is complemented by these new questions. 21B, I'll read it and explain it briefly. It says, do you not only, there's 21A asking if you're buying this firearm for yourself, but now 21B says, do you intend to purchase or acquire any firearm listed on this form and any continuation sheets or ammunition? That's interesting. For sale or disposition to any person described in questions 21C through M, which are the disqualifying questions, or to persons described in 21N1, which are the alien immigrant questions. So the obvious answer to this question is no. We're not buying that firearm for any other person other than ourselves, and we're not buying this firearm for somebody listed below. It's an obscure question, but it just deepens the liability for that customer who might be lying. If that person is prosecuted later and has completed this form, it really basically deepens the liability and responsibility of that person for lying on this question and possibly selling that to a friend or buying it for purposes of selling it to somebody or providing it to somebody for whom it should not be intended. Okay, just basically a complimentary question to 21A. Then we go to 21C, and it says, do you intend to sell or otherwise dispose of any firearm listed on this form in any continuation sheet or ammunition in the furtherance of any felony or other offense punishable by imprisonment for a term of more than 1 year, a federal crime of terrorism, or a drug trafficking offense? A lot of language there, but essentially asking the same thing. Are you acquiring this firearm for someone else? Again, expands on question 21A, and we do want to make sure they answer no to this question. All right. Self-explanatory, but why we haven't gotten a straight answer on this, except it really does hold that person much more responsible if ever called into question for prosecution of maybe a straw purchase. All right, 21N1 and 21N2 are your alien immigration questions. The numbers have changed based again on those questions that were added that we just reviewed. So we have 21N instead of 21L. And right there in highlight, they've added this little sentence that says U.S. citizens and nationals have leave 21N1 and 21N2 blank. Not only was this confusing for the last 5 or 7 years that we've been dealing with this, if you guys remember back, we had that little NA box. Now they say just leave it all blank. And we do know that citizens will go ahead and mark these no. In the case of marking both of these no, it is expected that those get corrected and with a straight line through an initial and date. But it's better if you just warn your customers ahead of time that if the citizens, they leave 21N1 and 21N2 blank, and we don't see any issue with highlighting that question as you see here. Take a highlighter, mark that up if you're using paper forms, and or include that in your process before you have your customers complete the 4473s. Remind them of that question. Leaving it checked as a no shouldn't result in any critical violations of having the forms completed, as the ATF today does not see that as a major issue when they're doing inspections. But if we can prevent it from happening, all the better. Section B at the bottom in the certification warning here for the customer, they've changed the language to say, I further understand that the repetitive purchase of firearms for the purpose of resale to predominantly earn a profit without a federal firearms license is a violation of federal law. If you read into that, this is going after those folks who are buying firearms, reselling them maybe at flea markets or gun shows, or privately going into the business without a license, whether it be 5 guns a year or 10 guns a year or 20 guns a year. The ATF has never stipulated when you are actually in business without a firearms license. And this just basically presents much more latitude to the firearms dealer or the firearm ATF for prosecuting those folks in the business of selling firearms repeatedly and predominantly to earn a profit. Very interesting word. We'll have to watch case law on this one. All right, over into section C, up at the top here. This is important. If you're doing gun shows, box 25, and that is now not only asking for the name of the function in the county, it's asking for the address, city, state, and zip code. Why? Well, this is to help you make sure you send any 3310.4s or 12s to the respective county chief law enforcement officer or agency where they are required to be filed. Remember, if you're doing a gun show in a county other than where you are licensed, you have to go ahead and send those copies of those forms off to the respective supervisor of that county for law enforcement. So, and then when the ATF comes in and reviews your forms, believe me, they will be looking at these counties and these dates to see if you are abiding by the rule as it's always been stipulated, and if you're sending them to the right place as listed on your 3310.4. So if you're doing gun shows, this one is big for you. Also for those events that are authorized off-site, such as Elks Club and any NRA events where you might be transferring firearms. Okay. All right. Section C, this is where it starts to get the nitty-gritty for why this entire form had to be updated. Look at the notice in 27 above 27A is stipulating that if the transferee of buyer is under 21, a waiting period of up to 10 days may apply where notification from NICS or your state agency has been received within that within 3 days to further the Brady date hold to 10 days. All right, and as a reminder in there too, it says a NICS check is only valid for 30 calendar days from the date recorded in question 27A. As a reminder, that 30-day countdown starts the day after the date of 27A. It doesn't start on the date of 27A. So if I do my NICS background check today, I start counting tomorrow. Okay, and ATF is putting a lot of reminders in here about this because so many folks have been revoked on this issue, and they're getting a little mud in their face, an egg on their face, because they're backtracking to revocations from this past year and saying we're going to allow this to slide for now because people couldn't count 30 or 31, and they were making errors, and we were revoking licenses, and they have. But now they're making it very clear going forward as of the issuance of this form that you better be smart and use a calendar when you're counting those 30 days. And make sure you're checking the NICS update system and update screen to make sure that expiration date is correct. All right, they're telling us 2 or 3 times throughout this form about this 30-day issue. Down on 27C, again, you have the delayed date there with the date you can transfer on if you don't hear back from the ATF, the Brady expiration date. But it also says, if time period is not extended by NICS or the appropriate state agency. So this 10-day issue and this 30-day issue must be critical in the eyes of all of your employees completing transfers and handing out firearms. Question 27C. Here's where we really get into the under 21 issue. They've got a whole new box for us. They've expanded it obviously to the length of the page. But the first thing I want to go ahead and show you in this box is the overturned stipulation here. If you have an overturned decision and you have an AMD notification from a local court, or NICS has called you, they will give you the date on which they provided the overturned decision to you. So please, there a date line there. Was never a date line. You can plug that in there. And then obviously you got the box. There's one box for no response within 3 business days. That's always been there. That's standard. That should apply to everyone 21 and over. And then we've got these new boxes. Notice of additional delay of transferee under 21 years of age. When did you receive that notification? Again, you're going to get this notification by phone, but you also must be checking your NICS status update screens on any delays and make sure those dates have not changed. I guarantee you, we're going to have somebody miss a phone call, or the ATF's not going to call and say they did or left a message with so-and-so. On any delay, make sure you're checking that status screen and make sure you put the date in here when you are notified and put the new date of release in that second slot. Put that 10-day date that they provide to you or you see in your NICS status update screen, jot it in here. We also say, put it in box 32 so you don't make a mistake, and we'll get to that in just a minute. If you're getting any extended delays and even your 30-day expiration, it's great to put those dates also in box 32, and you'll see why as I get to that section. Then the bottom line here says no response was provided within 10 business days after additional delay for transferring a buyer under 21 years of age. Here's the second box for releasing a firearm. If you so desire, after that 10-day Brady date has expired due to the person being 18, 19, or 20 years old. All right, I know a lot of you are doing this already. You should have been doing this since we talked about this back in the fall, since they launched this requirement, but now you have the paperwork areas to fill the information in. and please make sure you get those dates correct. All right, just so you know, they removed in section C 27F and G, which allowed you to put the Brady date information or the Brady information here. This is where we used to call in the phone NICS checks. You used to have to put all this information in. They finally removed it from the form because so many fewer people are using the phone. If you're still using it and you want to notate who you talk to, you can certainly put that information in box 32 on form 4473. All right. Next, section E. This is where you are, the transferor is certifying the form after it's completed. They added this language, and this is important. It says, I further certify that the firearm transfer is within 30 days from the date of initial contact with NICS. Again, they've had so many revocations on this one violation this year that they're backtracking a little bit. For those that were revoked, they may be reinstating licenses. We are yet to see that. But at SHOT Show, our new director of ATF said they are going to look at this as a minor versus a major infraction for those revocations in the past. But based on the fact that we're seeing all of this language in the new form, we don't expect that to be any type of non-violation for the fact of revocation or subject to revocation going forward. So please make sure you're using your calendar, you're checking your NICS status screen for those expiration dates on background checks. Can't reiterate that enough. Form 4473, instructions. Just a couple of things we'll mention here. First, on question A, private party transfer, we talked about PMF being required to be marked properly. In 21K, which is the qualifying questions, we have expanded the domestic violence question to include former dating relationships. There's a lot of instruction, major instructions on this, expanded to explain all of the do's and don'ts, basically. And this is for the customer. So please don't try to be an attorney. Don't try to interpret everything that's written there. If anyone is asking about a non-spousal, non-marriage type of domestic partner relationship where they may have been arrested or charged with any type of domestic violence, point them to the instructions and let them try to figure it out. Very complicated language, but it's all there. It's all there. All right, next background check, question 22nd, second paragraph warning says, you should not contact, this is for you, the FFL, you should not contact NICS and must stop the transfer. If any of the qualifying questions are answered yes to, if they admit to being a bad person, if they admit to being a prohibited person, and or during your conversation where you're qualifying that person, you believe that transfer to not be for them. Maybe it's a straw purchase attempt. Maybe it's a situation where they're not going to be the future possessor of that firearm. Please be careful. You will be held accountable. Straw purchases are at the top of the radar for ATF. And we don't want to just go ahead and transfer because we had a NICS proceed. It's saying don't even bother doing a background check if you believe this person's prohibited. We've been through a lot of hearings this year for revocations, and some of the defense language from the FFL has been, well, I got a background check. I didn't think, or I didn't know they were prohibited. Even though I did the form properly, I didn't know, or I didn't qualify, or they didn't tell me. Well, a lot of that is being micromanaged now through language in the instructions and the requirements of proving interest and intent on that purchase to make sure it's not a straw purchase. Again, for the FFL, second warning, it says, even if the transferor or seller has complied with the federal background check requirements, even if you have done everything correct, even if that form looks 100% correct, if you did not prevent a straw purchase, you can still be held accountable. Again, we're getting a lot of accusations through revocations this year where the FFL does not have corporate responsibility, doesn't have a good policy or program in place in writing that says they verify interest and intent on every transferee before they sell it. So there you go. That's a quick down and dirty of the changes. Again, nothing major, just some extra boxes to fill in. But as always, we recommend with every FFL employee, RP, anyone who's handling firearms or doing a transfer, take this new form. You can take it now, you can print it off the website, have every employee read it A to Z, cover page 1 to 6.5, it is, page 7. It's a little longer, it's much more detailed, asking for a few more details from you before you proceed with a transfer. We suggest having every employee and staff sign off and initial this, a copy of it, put it in their file so that you can prove you did training with your employees when the new form came out, and you can hold your employees accountable for doing so. There's some defense in that, and that's the greatest way for every employee to understand what they're responsible for, and that they, as an employee, can go to jail or be charged with a criminal offense on top of the FFL if something goes wrong. So, well, I feel a little bit bad for those of you who have not started to look at this, train your employees, and start to discuss this new form with the team, and to understand it yourselves before you actually present it to your customers. There are questions on here that we're getting, again, a lot of FFLs calling in saying, how do I explain this to my customer? Well, here we go. Let's try a few of these. First of all, number one is, this is still a big question from back during the fall. We had the PMF and the marking requirements change for personally manufactured firearms. We're getting a lot of questions about home-built firearms that are used, that are built on a lower receiver from a legit FFL regulated manufacturer, such as Aerodynamics or PSA or Primary Arms, one of the others. Basically, if a firearm is built at home using a serialized lower receiver from a known and recognized licensed manufacturer, that is not a personally manufactured firearm. That is simply a home-built AR legal firearm. You do not have to list it as a PMF. You do not have to treat it as a PMF. And a personally manufactured firearm is basically a ghost gun, something that somebody has built from an unserialized receiver. Again, we've told you over and over in months past that we do not recommend that you bring these into your shop for either pawn, don't accept them for pawn or trades or used gun purchases. There's no guarantee or warranty that goes with that firearm, nor do you know if it shoots right or functions correctly, and you absorb the liability on PMFs. So again, a PMF is not an AR built on a licensed serialized AR platform or AR receiver. Okay. Number two, JC, jump in if you got any comments or questions on any of these here. Number two, what type of firearm is a shockwave? We keep getting this question over and over and over, and I don't know why. We didn't know why we were getting it so much lately, but we actually figured out that IOIs are visiting stores and coming up with 3 different names for shockwaves based on who they talk to or who they report to. Well, we went to the source, we went to the ATF FIPB, and we actually asked a question: what is the type for a firearm such as a shockwave or Remington Tac-14, and Black Aces has some of these out there as well. And basically, a firearm without a shoulder stock, shotgun without a shoulder stock, and that is not a pistol grip firearm with an 18-inch barrel. If it's a 26-inch firearm that shoots a shot shell, it does not have a stock. It can be labeled as one of the 3 following. It can be listed as a firearm, as initially labeled back in 2017 in an ATF open letter, or it can also be called a pistol grip firearm, believe it or not. Even though it doesn't have a pistol grip, it's got the bird's head handle. It can be referred to as a pistol grip firearm. You can also just simply label it other. Other is acceptable. So pistol grip firearm, other, all basically, can be used as type for firearm. Okay, JC, yep. You still there?
I am, and remember that pistol grip firearm or PGF is acceptable.
Yeah. All right, please explain reside in city limits.
This is a new one, and this all is stemming from that NICS Denial Notification Act. Excuse me, where NICS and the ATF will notify local law enforcement that an individual has completed a 4473 and been denied for that purchase. And according to the new act, it is the responsibility of local law enforcement to go address this with the individual. So what NICS and ATF want to know is whether or not you as an individual reside in the city limits or in a county jurisdiction or other jurisdiction. So that way they can refer the denied transaction to the appropriate authority. This is one of those things, and I always say with the address information relative to the transferee buyer, the customer. I don't want to call it coaching, but you can support them through that. In other words, what I'm saying is if they leave off street, avenue, court, lane out of their address, if they abbreviate a city, if they abbreviate a county or put USA for county, you as the FFL can certainly address that with them and say, hey, change county from USA to the county you live in. The same holds true with this question. A customer is going to ask you and state they don't know. The simplest way to address this is ask the customer, if they dialed 911, would the city respond to their house or would a county jurisdiction or another jurisdiction? And if they still can't figure it out, you have the option of them selecting unknown. So just remember that. Don't overthink it. It's pretty simple.
Yep. Yeah, and then next, how do we explain 21A, 21B, and 21C in the prohibited questions area? We're getting a lot of questions on this, guys. Again, if you haven't looked at the form, go read these questions. Basically, it's asking the same thing three ways of the transferee of the customer. 21A hasn't changed at all. That question asks if this firearm is for you. Everyone should be answering yes. The only time you leave that blank is when you pick up a firearm for someone you know from a gunsmith for repair or servicing. Okay, you can leave that blank. Check no on that and all deals are off. You do not proceed with the transfer. But assuming they check yes in 21A, and then 21B asks again, are you buying this gun for someone who may be prohibited, somebody other than yourself? So it first asks, are you buying this for yourself? Then they ask, are you buying this for someone else that you shouldn't be buying it for? And then that should be obviously a no answer. And then 21C says, are you buying this for the purpose of reselling for profit, which means maybe at a gun show, maybe at a flea market, maybe you just sell 5 guns a month to make some money, side money. Well, that's all about selling firearms without a license, being in the firearms business without a license. And this refers back to the gun show loophole. It might be edging its way towards universal background checks, but this question is very specific. So you really need to be paying attention now to your collectors. I know you all have customers who buy maybe more than 20 guns a year or transfer in more than 20 guns a year from you or through you. You need to be looking at those folks because you do not want to be supporting illegal activities. You don't want to be a conspiracy to firearms trafficking. You don't want to be conspiring with someone to be in the business to sell firearms without a license. That 21C is the question we're getting a lot of challenge on the last couple of weeks for those folks already using this, because their customers are stopping at that point and asking the FFL, should I check yes or no on this? And the answer is we cannot tell them whether to check yes or no on any of the prohibited questions. You can refer them to the instructions. The instructions are very clear on all of these items. It spells it out very clearly that you cannot be selling guns on the side, deriving profit, making money. And in the past, there really, and it still is, there's no amount of money discussed. It's just asking, are you deriving for profit? So we just use caution here, stay away, be careful. But again, let the customers read the instruction and understand all of this for themselves.
Just look at these new questions, everyone, as the ATF closing up the question as to whether or not you're buying the firearm for somebody who can or cannot have a firearm. They're really pushing the whole straw purchase prevention aspect of the form.
Yeah, and they are coming down hard, as we'll discuss in a few more minutes here. Number five, what if customers check the no boxes on 21N1 and 21N2? This has been these were 21L1 and 21L2 in the past. This is very concerning because all of a sudden 21L1, now known as 21N1, needs to be left blank. Okay, in the past we were checking that as a no. So that's a change for everyone, new and former FFL transferees who have filled these forms out before. And then 21N2, obviously they want to leave blank. We've been told in the past, meaning prior to this implementation of this new form, that the ATF wasn't citing anyone for making violations or completing violations, meaning leaving those boxes checked no, instead of having the customer cross it out, initial and date it, leave it blank as required. So use caution here, highlight those instructions. Make sure your customers understand this piece of the section 21, question 21. You got to remind them about this. You can use our before you begin guide, make some edits to that and remind them not to check those boxes if they are US citizens, resident aliens, and do not meet those qualifications. So leave them blank. Put a big sign up there. 21N1 and 21N2 is blank for everyone except non-immigrant aliens. Okay.
You can certainly highlight that on the form just to show them.
Yeah, use the yellow highlighter. Invest in a yellow highlighter. All right, 27A. When do you start counting the Jersey? This one's great. I don't know why, but we probably got 5 or 6 calls on this just last week, and I think it's because of the revocation issue. Especially with the new form, you'll see in a minute why this is back in focus. The ATF said back at SHOT Show, the ATF director stood on stage and said they're going to reassess revocations that were completed last year due to exceeding the 30-day expiration on NICS background check submittals. So the question is, when do you start counting those 30 days for the checks to be valid? And the answer is, you start, if you do the submittal today to NICS or your state PLC, you start counting tomorrow. Okay, it's the day after the submittal of the background check. Our best practice is to never wait 30 days, never allow 30 days, make it 25 days, put your own internal policy in place, pull out the calendar when necessary, count those 30 days, and make sure you do not exceed the limitations and the requirements. Okay. Number 7, how should I process a second NICS check for someone who fails to pick up their firearm within 30 days? Here's a follow-up question. We're getting a lot of these because people do not want to screw it up, and we applaud that. So the best practice, there's 2 options, but the best practice is option A, and option A is to start a new form. If somebody hits their 31st or 35th day or was sick or out of the country or whatever may have been the issue, if they need to resubmit, you need to resubmit a background check for them. There's no harm in starting a new form. Keep it clean and let them fill out a new form. Take the old form, complete it through box 35, make sure you sign it, make sure there's a big note in there in box 32 that says gun not transferred, 30-day expiration, whatever notes you want to put in there. Keep that form, do not throw it away, do not shred it, go put it in your denied cancel folder. You have to keep that forever now. Start a new form. Okay. Option B. Option B is to reuse the original form and simply to resubmit it, denoting a new submittal date in 27A and a new NICS or PLC control number in box 27B. It gets a little confusing. You have to make sure it's clear which date is for which NTN number or control number for that background check. So you can reuse the form, but we do recommend just keeping it clean. It'll be easier for the ATF inspector if and when they ever pick up that form and try to figure out what happened and how the transfer was completed. Okay. And number 8, should I print and attach the MDI or NICS status report or other state validation control number report to my 4473 for all delays? Now, here's a little change in the game, guys. A year ago, we told you to attach these forms to your 4473. We said that was a great place to store them, but recently we've changed the best practice to be do not attach the NICS transaction summary or the MDI report to the 4473. Keep it in your buddy file. Anything attached to the 4473 falls under scrutiny of your inspectors when they do come and arrive. So if they're attached, they are going to look at different data pieces, data entry for your date of birth, driver's license ID number, spelling of the name, the middle initial, etc. All of that shows up on the NICS NTN status report for delays and proceeds and denials. So just start keeping those separate if in fact you were attaching them to your forms. And you know, someone asked last week, should I go remove them? Well, that's up to you. If you want to remove them, you can, but going forward, definitely do not attach those to your 4473s. Okay. Next. All right. So we want to highlight some of these critical issues. If you haven't looked at the form yet, these are the pieces you definitely want to go and absorb, understand, and educate yourself first so that you can then further educate your customers. First, on Section B, for the customer, at the bottom of the certification is a new sentence. It says, I further understand that the repetitive purchase of firearms for the purpose of resale or predominantly earn a profit without a federal firearms license is a violation of federal law. Okay, this is right there. They have to sign it, they have to date it, and you have to know that what they're saying is true, okay? And if you know it's not true, or if you're facilitating them purchasing without scrutiny and not questioning and challenging it, you will fall subject to being involved in any investigation that moves forward on that. Again, the ATF is getting very specific in going after firearm dealers without persons dealing in firearms without a license. The gun show loophole is going to disappear because of this, we believe. The flea market sales are going to be scrutinized and pursued. And those individuals might be getting firearms through you. So you must be careful with this. Okay. For you, for the employee, for your staff, on their certification, there's a new sentence. Here it is. I further certify that this firearm transfers within 30 days from the date of initial contact with NICS. This was not there before. And this is probably going to relieve the ATF from considering what to do with those transfers that were over 30 days prior, because they mentioned, again, back at SHOT Show, the ATF director, Steve Dettelbach, got up there and said they're going to reassess anyone revoked just simply for that 30-day violation or expiration. But now they put it in writing. They're putting it right here for you to confirm that you did not do that. So we don't want to take any chances. Make sure you are not failing to meet that 30-day expiration. And again, best practice would be to make it 25 days. Okay. All right, again, for the employee, okay, so this is a zero tolerance issue, has been, will continue. Now that they're putting this in writing, we do believe that this is going to be impactful. So no matter what you heard from SHOT Show or in the news or on YouTube or wherever, we worry about this one. You're going to be held accountable if you make this mistake. So watch out for zero tolerance. And here's the big one, guys. All the conversations we've had, a lot of this has been about straw purchasing, restricting straw purchasing. It aligns with the Biden's Safer Communities Act. It aligns with the NICS Denial Act. Now, what we want to do is make sure we're training our team and you have it visible to your customers. Go order your Don't Lie kits if you haven't. They're free, absolutely free. Some good training, great awareness to folks coming in thinking about straw purchasing from you or commercing in firearms without a license. Okay, get this program in place. It does wonders when the ATF walks in and sees this. They understand that you're understanding of the process in the program. You have the training in place. It gives you a few little brownie points as soon as they walk in to see this program in place at any time they do an ATF inspection. Nice chatting with you all, and we'll see you soon. See you on the road.